going? Let me take a drink while I'm waiting on this. Alright. Alright, so, I don't know. I've been having trouble getting a nighttime stream done because Granny's schedule is changing rapidly and it's affecting my schedule, and I don't know. Like, I'm a man of schedule. ADHD means that I need things to kind of go the right way, and if they don't, I go a little bit crazy. And so Granny's thing at night has been just kind of fucking with me entirely. But I just finished part 8 of Jojo's Bizzare adventure. And I've been wanting to talk about this. There's a bunch of things I want to talk about on it. And I only really want to do like one video of it. Because it doesn't need that much more than one video. It's the type of... So I'm going to kind of split this into half. The first half is going to be spoiler free, and then I'm going to, tell people, hey, I'm going to start spoiling shit for the second half. And we're going to try and get through everything I want to talk about the bizarre adventure of Jojo, of the Jojos, of the many Jojos, of all of the Jojo. So, to start off, I could not find the written version, the manga, for the first 2 parts, and I think half of the third part as well. No matter what I did, I could not find them. So I had to give up, and I started watching the show, the anime, for the first, and then I just kind of stuck with that for the first 5 parts, which is current, and then part 6 is going to be released in a couple months, and I guess I'll watch that. It'll scar me, but Jojo is... How to put this into sort of a pitch. Jojo has a lot of elements that I would normally not engage with. Frequent and gruesome death is something that I generally avoid. I feel, doesn't add much to a story. And that does remain the case in Jojo. It certainly is a major detraction. But the point and purpose of Jojo, the thing that I think makes Jojo something that some people should definitely read, is it is a creative injection into your brain. It's like pure distilled creativity being pumped right into your eyeballs. And to kind of explain Jojo, I want to kind of explain how I rank shows and series that I watch and read and play. For me, Jojo is a low B, high C story. It is something that has a lot of value to certain people, to people who are creative, people who want to write, who want to be a creative person, people who want to create stories, would get a lot out of Jojo. I expect that, in 10 years' time, people are going to make... There's going to be some masterpieces made that some of the high-class art that's made in, 10 years' time is going to go, I got my inspiration from Jojo, from Jojo's Bizzare Adventure. That is the type of story that Jojo is. It's a fuel other stories type of story. And that is because of how just utterly bonkers creative this thing is. And it does inspire the mind to go places that the mind wouldn't normally go, to make connections that the mind normally wouldn't make. It is strange and weird and it has some severe downsides, but it is fuel. It is pure unbridled fuel for a creative mind. Like, that is what Jojo is. And I think it's something that if you like want to be a creative type, this is the type of story you want to read. There is this progression of people who work at the fringe, who do the utter craziest bullshit that is almost impossible to decipher. And then you have people who maybe are trying to get to that fringe themselves and do so by trying to decipher the writings of these crazies and understand those writings. And in doing so, they create something that is a little bit more coherent and formatted in such a way that can be consumed by more people. And then you have people who want to understand and broaden, but aren't exactly the most communicable people, who take that outer fringe stuff, that stuff that's already slightly been chewed on and made into a more understandable, if still somewhat cryptic format, and make it less. And this process just kind of continues until you reach stuff that's very easy to consume, stuff that's easy to enjoy, and is yet still has a lot of depth and interesting concepts. These are the most popular things. These are the things that spread the most. And it always stems from that, from just this kind of gradual consumption of ideas that are difficult to grasp and that are then repurposed into something that's easier to compress. And this author is in that part of the... It's very clear he loves random facts. He probably spends his nights trolling around Wikipedia, reading random articles on everything from history to science to math. Like, he loves these weird concepts in the world, and he tries to process them, and it's very clear he doesn't understand them fully, but he tries to process them and connect them in such interesting ways that it becomes this kind of great creative mulch. It's fascinating and weird and creative and strange. And if you want to create, if you want to write, if you want to film, if you want to be a creative type of person, this is the type of... If you want to produce something that is popular, this is the type of mulch that you want to be consuming. This is the type of story that you want to be reading, because it triggers those paths in your brain. You can feel your brain on fire, like trying to process the insanity and turn it into order. And it's sometimes impossible, but it is that type of story. It is just a pure insanity, creative mulch. And if you're not a creative type, there's stuff to enjoy here, but like, you're now talking about personal preference. If you have a personal preference for things like body horror and lots of death and detective style stories with some action in it, then you can probably get a lot out of Jojo. If you're in for looking for weird memes, Jojo is... I mean, like, this is what I'm saying. It is creative mulch. There isn't a thing in Jojo that cannot be just converted into pure creativity. And it is... it's incredible for that. But this is what I kind of mean by like a BC level story. Stories that I would usually categorize as S. So let me talk about a little bit about my categorization series. It's system. It's focused on the basics of the writing. how easy is it to read? How well does everything flow? Um, how how well does the narrative structure, just on a basic level, is how well is the story told off, and what are the payoffs for the downsides? How much do the payoffs outweigh the downsides? Stories like One Piece and Gintama I mark as S's, because even though there are downsides, even though there's some pacing issues, and there are some difficult parts to get through, the payoffs of those stories just so far outweigh the pay-in, the upfront cost for like Gintama. Gintama is a series that starts paying off 30 episodes in. The anime is far superior to the manga, and the payoffs just go. And so, like, 30 episodes, it's a bit of a buy-in, but it's not that severe. There's stories out there that are incredible that take hundreds of episodes to get in to where it gets good. Like, that is 30 episodes is almost nothing in terms of buy-in. One Piece actually kind of hits the ground running and has very few spots where it feels padded, or it feels slow, or it feels difficult to get through. But it's constantly paying off, so it's so easy to get through One Piece, because it's very easy to get in, and it's very easy to just kind of keep going right on through the more difficult parts. With Jojo, the writing is very halting at times. There are story points that don't make sense or just are never explained. There are things that happen that are difficult to deal with. He has propensities towards dealing with women that are not great. He has a very strong love of body horror and a fascination with killing animals as well, which is there's some very sick and depraved habits that he has. And he is writing a sick and depraved world, and that is part of why he writes in that style. But it makes it difficult. The first two parts are so hard to get through. At least until some of the creativity of this magic system he has starts to show off. And it isn't really until part 3 that he really gets the magic system that he wants, that works for him. The first magic system of Hammond is so minutia that it is difficult for someone who is as bombastic and weird as he wants to be to use it. He just can't really do anything with it. The second magic system, and the magic system that is present from part 3 to part 8, is Stan's, and this is like a glove on his writing style. And Stan's is where the creativity just blossoms. Part 3 is incredibly... It's much better written than the previous 2 parts. And while there is definitely some good in the first 2 parts, there are people who will argue that the first 2 parts are pretty good. Second part was okay. First part was... I mean, like, the other problem with those parts is that they're short. Benefit to those problems is that they're short. I think the first part is like 10 episodes, and the second part is like 20. And it's not until the third part that it's like 50 episodes almost. The show never gets very long. Which is kind of to its benefit. And I'm trying... My head right now is, do I switch to spoilers? Is it spoiler time? I think it's spoiler time. So, spoiler warning. We're moving into spoiler territory now. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and move into spoiler territory now. he really like part 3 is kind of the point where he figures out what he's doing with the world. These stands, he's able to make them creative. He's able to make them interesting. He's able to make them do different things. He's able to affect the world with them versus Hammond, which is this breathing technique. The stands allow him to do the crazy shit. And I mean, like, he goes fucking crazy with it. The first villain stand, the world, stops time for everyone but the villain, so that the villain can move around freely for an X number of seconds. And he has to, of course, counter this by saying, well, the main hero is going to figure out how to do the same thing, because his stand can also do that. Totally didn't just add this on. And this is kind of the thing, is like, this is kind of what I'm talking about when I say it's like a C or a B story. There are decisions that are made that are not led up to. And it's all on display in part 3. He has Star Platinum be able to stop time because he can't think of any other way to stop this thing that he's created. He's created this incredible idea for a villain, and he has no idea of how to stop it other than, well, I guess the hero now suddenly, who has never stopped time before, now suddenly can, because it was always going to be that way. Like, he doesn't lead in, he doesn't explain very well. His eventual explanations for what stands are is so bizarre and so strange. And like, oh my god, because it's aliens. It's like, this is an alien virus that kills people, except some people evolve and get these stands that then no one else can see unless they've also been infected. And that doesn't even remain like flat as a flat truth for the whole story either. By part, I mean, like, oh my god, it's just, and so like, my favorite parts right now are part 4, part 6, and part 8. Like, those are the ones that are the most just incredible, just out there, weirdest, most fun stories that he's done. And he kind of has two main formats. He either stays in one area and deals with the mystery of one spot, or he goes on a journey. And his journey stories tend to be weaker than his stay in one spot stories. So, part 3 is a journey story. They're taking this trip from Japan to Egypt, and they face a whole bunch of shit along the way. Which, by the way, the other thing, he has a specific love of poop and piss. There is a ton of urine and there's a ton of feces just everywhere in this story. And that was one of the hardest things for me to deal with. I don't know what issues that guy has, but less of that, please. And, you know, to his credit, I think parts 6, 7, and 8 don't have much of it. I think there's a little bit in part 6, but I think that I don't recall seeing any in part 7 or part 8. So that is something that he thankfully starts to minimize blissfully. He also does get a little bit better writing women. So, and I hesitate to say that because he has problems writing people. In that, and part 3 is where kind of this starts, and it continues, because like part 3 is the first time he actually has a cast of characters. Like part 2 has 3 heroes and 1 villain-ish, and part 3 finally has like a team of 5 people going and doing a thing. 6 people by the end. 5 people and a dog that has a stand and then dies horribly because he hates dogs, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if he hates dogs and wants an opportunity to kill them brutally, or he loves dogs and kills them brutally to make the point of how bad things are. I don't know which one it is. It's really hard to say. I just wish he'd kill less dogs. It's just my personal preference. It's such a cheap... And that's the other thing, is like this series is full of the cheap. Oh, this guy's a villain because he brutally killed someone on screen. He's a rapist. He killed a dog. It's just cheap ways to make you hate people. 101. This is, there's a lot of weaknesses in the writing. It is desperately weak in terms of writing. The stands, I will probably not spend too much time talking about individuals, about every single stand, because, like, the creativity is, like, those stands' creativities is the point. You just have to experience some of this shit. Like, some of it is just, like, mind-blowingly strange and weird. The part 4 is better because it's situated kind of in one spot, so even though there is a team, it's only like 3 or 4 people big, and more of what's happening is that there's a community growing around these 3 or 4 people who sometimes participate in what's going on and sometimes don't. Though this is one of his 3 villains that are dedicated to this idea of no one will ever find me. I'm going to use this stand to gain complete and total power and no popularity, and no one will ever know me or gain my happiness. Kira, the Killer Queen stand user, is not looking for power per se. He's just looking to kill people because he's a serial murderer. And he just wants to use the stand to cover up. And it's an okay stand for him, but it isn't until part 8 that, like, the author actually puts together a stand that works for that goal. For that goal of, like, I want to live my life and not get fucked around by anybody. When, he also, like, even in part 3 is saying people with stands are drawn to each other. So it's like, every character knows that if you have a stand, you're gonna, run into more stand users. So Killer Queen, the Killer Queen's user wanting to, live a peaceful life with his stand, it's like, well, other stand users are going to come to you. This is just the rules of the stand. And the same thing happens in part 5 with this mob boss who can destroy time. Sometimes this series, I don't know. It's just like, but it's like, he's a stand user. Other stand users are going to be drawn to him. That's just going to keep happening. He's not going to live a quiet life. It doesn't matter how powerful his stand is. Other stand users are going to come, and one of them's going to win. Like, oh, God. Honestly, like, I had problems with part 5 because part 5 was more of a journey series. And it tried to kind of do the same plot as part 4 with the, and this is why, like, I can't remember the mob boss's name, is because, like, it was just Killer Queen again. It was just do Killer Queen again. the same plot hits, the same plot points happened again. And part 6 was just like, all right, we'll shake it up. We're going to stick in one area. We're going to get in this prison. And this is where he finally figures out that he can write women, because he just has to write women in the same way he writes the men, which is bad. He can't write any of the characters well, so he doesn't have to treat the women differently. He can just write them as poorly as he writes everyone else, and then, hey, suddenly a lot of his problems are vanished because he stopped using them as sex objects and toys to be played with, and, you know, goals. Oh. And part 6 just gets fucking ballsy. Part 6 is just like, you know what? We're gonna reset time. We're gonna restart the world. And it's just like, alright, that is legitimately insane. You've crossed into total insanity. We're now in the land of we've lost everything. And part 6 also is where I really started to see the whole how this is a concept. Like one of the things that I have loved about Jojo is that it shows a lot. It puts on display a lot of the weaknesses of that most writers end up running into. Things like the author's voice. Jojo has a terrible time getting away from the author's voice. The idea when you're writing a story is that you want the characters to have their own voice throughout the story. You want the character to be that character. You want that character to, you know, the character will change, but you want that character to kind of be themselves. And almost every author eventually stumbles into the point where the character's voice becomes the author's voice, because they need exposition or they need something to happen. And so the character kind of breaks character a little bit and does what the author needs them to do. This is incredibly common in all writing. It's incredibly common. In fact, usually this is one of the big ones for me in terms of differentiating between an S and an A, is if your characters, honestly, like, if you can't keep your characters in character the whole way through, that is a major flaw for me. And he can't. Most of his characters, he introduces them. On their introduction, they have a character personality, and then by the time that they're no longer in their introduction, they are a Jojo character. They are this person who is weirdly knowledgeable about everything, who must have consumed a Wikipedia at some point, and can just, and like all of the characters are like this. Every single character. When people say the characters are cardboard cutouts, this is what they mean. They all speak in one kind of voice. They're incredibly intelligent in very specific ways that if you gathered that many people in the same room, there's no way they could all be that knowledgeable about all of these things all at the same time. This is just the author's voice he cannot stop himself. So they all end up bleeding together into this just kind of mesh. But the characters aren't important. The stands are what's important. And the stands are where this is just basically a trigger to go down a rabbit hole into the crazies. And on top of that, as much as the characters' voices all merge together, the character appearances do not. This series, there's jokes about it being mostly about fashion and posing, and those are not far off. that every character in this series has a very distinct fashion, and they all spend a lot of time posing in weird and interesting ways. It is a fascinating study on human figure and how to make people look like bricks. His art style is so weird, just so strange, and he changes it between series, though not that much. Part 7 was a big mistake, I think. I think he recognized it was a big mistake, and in fact, because I was just talking about the fashion and the posing, a big part of that is because those elements are missing. A lot of the Jojo elements are missing from Part 7 because he's reset this world. He's doing the same Joestar from the first part in the seventh part. He's giving him an actual stand, and like, because it's now the 1870s again, it's like the fashion's all kind of bled out. Everyone's wearing meh types of clothes. Most of the posing now has to rely on our core cast of Johnny and of Jonathan Joestar and Zeppelini, who have style, who have a very distinct fashion and do a lot of posing. But like, most of the fashion is just not there. But that isn't my only complaint with 7. 7 has some very big writing issues, and this is where, like, he's getting slowly better as a writer as he goes, as is usually the case. People do tend to improve over time. Unfortunately, this means that he has gotten to the point in his ability to write that he's also learning to fail in new ways. And I think I talked a bit about this when I was going through this, because this was a 3 chapters in a row, 3 stories in a row, where, like, the choices are demonstrably bad. So we start this trio of problems off with Sandman. So, you know, let's put up a clinic here. There is a writing technique of trick the reader. It's very popular in detective. It's actually kind of the core writing tool of a detective story, is you want to trick the reader into thinking something is true when it's not, and then expose the lie when you reveal the mystery. Like, this is what a detective story is about, and Jojo is very much adjacent to a detective story. It draws from detective novelization, at least. The problem is the author... The delicate tightrope you walk with a detective story is that you want to trick your reader, but you want to place hints down about the truth that your reader can follow and still manage to trick them. Like, that is the tightrope. You give too many hints, and readers are going to figure it out. You don't give enough hints, and the reader's going to be pissed. And this is where you generally, if you're going to make this fruit, you want to go on the side with the more hints, because people aren't going to be as upset. They'll just think a little bit less of the mystery involved. When you do the other side of that line, when you fall on the other side where you did not give enough hints, what it ends up feeling like is you wanted to trick the reader, but you didn't have confidence in being able to trick the reader, so you forced the reader to be tricked by just not giving them any way to have guessed what was going to happen. And this is what happens with Sandman. Sandman's backstory is the story that we open with, so he's supposedly a fairly important and central character. He's talked about several times throughout the story. He shows up several times. He's given a very explicit backstory note of being against the American government. He's a Native American. The American people are taking his land. He's trying to get the land back. He's trying to purchase the land. That's why he wants to win this race. And it turns out he's a ninja working for the American government. None of this is hinted at. You never see him talk in the background with someone from the government. Never happens. He spends his entire time running as fast as a horse by kicking off of the ground and like running, like an animal. His name is apparently Soundman rather than Sandman. It's a mistranslation. And all of this is like just revealed when he dies. And it's just like, and they introduce this Japanese character right in the middle, right before the fight against Sandman, and they have that Japanese character be stalking around, and so like the entire idea is, oh, here's this ninja that's been hired by the American government to win, and all of the stand attacks that are store sound and use it to attack are written in Japanese characters. And then, like, Sandman comes up and shivs the Japanese guy and kills him on the spot. And it's Sandman that's actually the ninja. And it's like, the author's like, aha, you never would have guessed that the Native American runner was a ninja who writes in Japanese. No, we wouldn't have guessed. We would never have guessed. Ever. Never, because you never gave us a single fucking hint that this was what this character was. You didn't trust yourself to trick us, so you forced us to be tricked and destroyed the character to do it. That is... And the reason that this is such a bad thing in writing is that that is a signal that you do not respect your own work and you do not respect your characters enough to make character build-up matter. What that tells me as the reader is that you are willing to scrap a character on what is essentially a gag. And it doesn't matter how much character build-up you've put into that character, you are willing to scrap quite a lot of build-up on a gag. And that is not a good look. Now, again, he seems to have figured out his mistake, and he doesn't repeat this in part 8. But then we have the second big mistake. So we've got, in part 7, we've got another journey story going on. They're going around and they're collecting parts of this corpse of Jesus. And I get what they're going for. But the concept is that there's these trials for each of these parts. And they come across one of these trials that is for the parts that is the old there's an old fable of this child or woman or witch. You know how fables go, like that figure that can be a child or a witch of some sort that's kind of hiding out in the forests. And when you drop something into a place that it can't be retrieved from, there's will bring it back to you, but they will ask you which one you dropped, and they'll have a better version of whatever you dropped. And if you answer correctly what you dropped, they'll give you both. And this is the first part of the test is to show that you're an honest person and not greedy. And they get a couple of parts like this. But the second part of the trial is that they then have to spend everything they gained, this method, before sundown. Which, okay, I can kind of understand that. They got a bunch of stuff, and we get a lot of fun with them having gotten this money and these diamonds and this other material from this trick, and realizing that once you reach a certain level of money, that money is just kind of going to grow on its own, and how do you spend it? And you can't give it away, and you can't, like the rules state you can't give it away or drop it or have it stolen. Like, those are the rules. The problem comes when they finally, get rid of all of the money, and then they have to give the parts away. The point of the test is to find someone who is capable of dealing with this test, who's honest, and who is able to, who may have the right standing to get and use these parts correctly. To have to force them to give those parts up means that they are going to have to find someone who is interested in pieces of a corpse, which means that it's only going to be other people that are after that corpse, which means that they're going to give it to someone who is after that corpse who is not being tested. I understand the theming, but this breaks the very fundamental rules of what you're trying to put together here. It makes the test pointless. They should have just been the guy that got traded to. And then, we follow this up with fucking the main female character pushing herself into a lesbian relationship with the president's wife because he still can't actually write women better. Oh. And then, the child gets pregnant. The same female main character, 14-year-old. I should have known, the minute it was Jesus' corpse, I should have known that this was bad. Because he was going to do the virgin birth thing. And then he doesn't do it. It's just he starts this thing, and it's disgusting and gross, and I hate it. I hate that part of 7. It is just such a bizarre abuse, and then he just aborts it. He just gives it up. He gets bored of it, and he stops doing it. Or maybe, people complained enough, and he was like, all right, maybe this is actually a bad idea. Maybe I shouldn't do this. There's a reason that people are that part 7 is polarizing, and it is because he makes a lot of mistakes in part 7. Part 7 was very hard for me to get through. Part 8, however, was, I think, peak Jojo. Part 8 was fucking fantastic. We're back to being in one spot. We've got this expanding cast of characters. We've got a mystery going on. Our hero, our Jojo, is an incredibly interesting character. Killer Queen's brought back. I mean, kind of, but Killer Queen's technically brought back, which is cool. Every character, I think one of my biggest complaints for part 8 is that he never explains what is spreading stands around people, like, at the start of this thing, people are getting bitten by what looks like human teeth, what is remarked on as a human-like bite. And they get sick, and then they develop a stand ability. And this happens a few times early on. And then it's not talked about anymore, and we just start dealing with people who just have stand abilities around town. Because I guess, and then, like, it comes out that... And it's just like, it's never explained. It's never talked about. Past something is biting these people and giving people stand abilities. People get bit and then they get stand abilities. It's just how it is. And, like, later it's revealed that the Jesus's corpse from Part 7 was brought, at least for a little while, over to this area and buried in the ground here. So I'm sitting here going, well, did something like leave zombie Jesus and we've got an invisible zombie Jesus running around nibbling on people? Is that what's giving us stand abilities? That's my guess, because it's never talked about in the story. It's just brought up and dropped. This is it. We're done. Oh, God. But, like, everything else works so well that I don't care. I kind of just don't care. I can live with believing that it is zombie Jesus going around nibbling on people to give people stand abilities. I'm fine with that. It legitimately doesn't matter to me. And, like, Part 8 has some actually decent female characters in it. They still get, shit on a lot, but, there's actually several decent female characters. Some poor choices are made, but, compared to the rest of JoJo, this is, like, incredible progress with Part 8. The rotation from Part 7 is back, too, because I guess he's fascinated with this idea of something that can spin in a golden rotation. 3. Oh, God. The golden ratio rotation thing, and he's just fascinated by it. Oh, God. I mean, like, sometimes this author just goes off the deep end. But the thing that really and truly impressed me was the final battle against the final bad, where, you had Killer Queen, which was the stand that could just explode things that it touched. And it evolved over time to explode more more concepts. I guess. And then you've got, the mob boss's stand, which can basically destroy time and rewind time several seconds or something like that. His stand was never well explained. And, they've got these ideas, they've got these ideas behind those characters of, like, we don't want to be discovered, we don't want to be fought, we don't want to be contested, we want to just live our lives away from the public eye. But, like, they have such powerful stands that, of course, someone's going to be drawn to them. This one in Part 8, the head doctor's stand, is exactly the type of stand that Killer Queen and the mob boss should have had. His stand is the ability that if he is pursued, something will get in the way of his pursuers. Something will attack his pursuers. Fucking perfect. Like, this is the ability that you want for never being approached and never being talked to by another person. Like, this is the perfect ability. And the final conflict against him is incredible. And, like, his stand is fucking creepy and creative, and it's so cool. Like, that is peak JoJo right there. That is absolutely peak JoJo. Up to and including the hero coming up with some bonkers method of fighting the villain. Like, literal, utter bullshit method of fighting the villain. Like, that is peak. We are talking, like, peak JoJo. Part 8 is freaking fantastic. And I am looking forward to Part 9 coming out whenever. I don't know if I'll be reading it weekly or not. I have no idea. Part 8 was fascinating. And, like, I don't ever really want to be too spoilery, because, like, people should go read JoJo. If you want to be a creative type of person, go read JoJo. It'll do you good. It'll be good for your heart. Well, not your heart or your soul, but it'll be good for your creativity. I do feel like a curse has been lifted from my body, having finally caught up to this series. Oh God. Anyway, I might or might not stream tonight. I don't know. I don't know what's going to go on. If I do stream, I'll do Hades, because I didn't do Hades now. I'm doing a review now. We'll see what happens. I might do Hades later today. I don't know. We'll see. Bye-bye.